It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Welcome to another episode of the EdTech Mondays Nigeria show. I am your host, Chinyelu Akpa, and it's good to be here again. Today, we'll be continuing our conversation on the role of policies in driving EdTech adoption in Nigeria. And I have with me an amazing guest who would be diving even further from where Dami Oguntunde stopped last week. I have with me on the show Bridget Iyere. She's a product manager with 6 years of experience building products users love. She has experience in developing games, simulations, and interactive animations specifically tailored for kids in the 5 to 10 age range, which has given her valuable insights into their cognitive abilities, preferences, and engagement patterns. She's currently the product and operation lead at eLimu, an EdTech startup building fun, accessible education for curious kids in Africa. You're not a guest, so Bridget, it's good to have you back on the show.
Good to be back for the third time.
You just had to put that in.
Yes, I had to.
Thank you. So let's jump right into the meat of the conversation. I know that eLimu focuses on building, as you say, it's fun, accessible learning games for children, but you primarily focus for learners at the ECD level, and ECD to our listeners is early child development education level. So this is typically children at the kindergarten, nursery, and early primary. Yeah. So what were the challenges your organization noticed in that, level of education that made you focus an entire organization to just trying to solve and making learning fun and accessible for them at that level?
Okay, for us as an organization, we noticed that there was a gap in terms of resources that was available for kids to learn that early year. First off, there were no curriculum aligned. There was no alignment in terms of the content that was available to the Nigeria context, and also because we also built for the Kenya audience
market, yeah.
For the Kenya market. We also noticed that there was no alignment, and in terms of being relatable, relevant, we also noticed that there was a gap in that aspect, and we said, okay, one thing that we are big on is solving big problems or difficult problems, and we took it as a challenge for ourselves to say, okay, we're going to solve for this particular problem, and we went on building fun games for these kids that they can relate to it, especially ensuring that this content will aligned to the curriculum that is available and being used to teach in the school's classroom. Okay,
so if I hear you clearly, it was a problem of getting the right kind of content, and not just getting content that could be used at home and in school.
Yes.
So not just for engagement's sake or to keep the children busy, but to ensure that every time a child picks up a learning game or pick up any, educational material, edutainment really, there is some learning that is happening at the end of the day. Thank you for that. So now, given your experience as an EdTech innovator, what has been your experience with the adoption of EdTech solutions for early years education? Because if you'd agree with me, it's really one thing to build and it's another for people to adopt. So what have you had to go through to educate parents, for instance, guardians, then educate school owners, teachers, and even the users themselves, and taking them away from the regular content, more popular content that's flood the market, and help them see that this is what you should be using. This is how you should be using tech to teach children at this level.
So answer these questions in two approaches. So one for schools and one for parents. So for the school approach, some of the issues that we notice or we're faced with is first off infrastructure. Because infrastructure was like a problem. Our content is technology-based content, so it needs to be delivered using like device format. So some of these schools are not really open to the idea and saying, okay, are you trying to replace the role of a teacher in the classroom while we're bringing such content for these kids. So trying to help them understand or raise this some form of awareness to help them know that this is more of a supplementary type of learning material that can actually aid these teachers to pass on whatever learning that they want these kids to learn. And another issue was also internet penetration. We already know that internet is like a big problem in this part of the world. So we're thinking, okay, how do we make this accessible, available for the school audience? So because of that, because of eLimu, we said fun accessible. So we're constantly thinking, how do we make this accessible? We devised the means of delivering our content in offline version so that teachers can also adopt this form of learning in their classroom. But also something that we noticed was in terms of the type of curriculum that were being used in different schools. In our head, we thought it's just one type of curriculum, but we found out that different schools are using
British, Turkish, Finnish, Pakistani, Israeli.
Thank you, Israeli curriculum. So
everybody has an agenda.
Everybody has an agenda, and we're like, okay, we didn't see that coming. So how do we ensure that these kids are learning at the same pace? And this is why we adopted a framework called the Global Proficiency Framework.
Okay.
That creates a form of standard method to say, okay, this is what a child is expected to know in grade
regardless
one.
What curriculum you're using.
Yeah. Regardless,
so a
country.
Unifier.
Yeah, a unifier. So that is what we are using. And for the parents side of things, is more of affordability, because technology is not cheap, right? So how do we make this content available and affordable for our parents to be able to use this at home? So this also made us to devise the means to say, okay, do we make some of our content free for users, and whilst others can be premium? So ensure that there's accessibility, and regardless of your socioeconomic status, you can have access to this type of education. Your kids can still learn using our content regardless.
Thank you. So would you say that adoption for you now is easier than what it was last year or what it was 2 years ago? Are you really striking some form of balance with getting more learners? Because ultimately, if you're talking to schools or you're talking to parents, the ultimate goal is to get learners. So has it been effective when you're able to navigate the problems around infrastructure, internet connectivity, and pricing? Has what you've done, has it been effective to get more people using social? Are people receptive when you now tell them, okay, fine, this is how much internet it would cost you to use it, you can use this on any type of device, provided it just has internet on it? Are they even accepting it? Do they think that because that is the thing, do they believe that a child can learn using a game that is not a teacher standing in front of a board and instructing the learners?
So I'll say so far it has proven effective for some of the schools or learners that have interacted with our content. They have seen that it can go a long way for these kids to understand certain concepts that a teacher might take maybe a longer time trying to pass across. Again, in supplementary learning, it's just trying to provide the right form of material for this child to go practice at home with. And we have seen that kids enjoy learning through play. So our content provides this medium for these kids to learn what they need to know, and providing it in form of games, of animations that catches their interest, especially as we're talking about early year kids, right? So you really need to have content that speaks to this audience or to this market. But so far, I believe that it can be done on a larger scale if we have more backing or support from the government. These are ways that they can come in to say, okay, they have seen it, they have tested it, and it's just having this support from the government to say, okay, we can drive this on a larger scale to more schools, especially looking at the whole pricing, trying to ensure that there's a balance and schools can adopt it, parents can adopt it, but we'll still need some form of support or backing from the government.
So now you've just gotten into my next question. What would support from the government look like? What type of policies would you want to see that would drive the adoption of products such as yours, for mainstream use, or support you to get more learners onto this platform? So what type of policies, what type of supports, what do the governments do really that would be good enough support for you?
Okay, one aspect I think the government can actually play a big role in is infrastructure support. Of course, we're paying taxes. We
Yeah.
want to see where our taxes are being used. So in terms of infrastructural support, equipping these schools with the right type of equipment. So in terms of ICT departments, devices, where we can come in, and also collaborating with EdTech solution providers in terms of how these solutions can be deployed, just working hand in hand to see what work for a large scale type of deployment. So the government coming in with the infrastructure, we have the solution. We're not thinking about both solution, thinking about deployment, thinking about devices. The government also have their own role to play in terms of having, let's say, the devices available while we focus on this solution for the kids. And also another way that the government can play a big role is in unifying the curriculum that's being taught across different schools, not we trying to figure this out for a larger audience. We have seen that the unified system work with the whole global proficiency framework that provides like a 3 grading criteria, or 3 grading method, where you can see that a child is below expectation, meets or exceed expectation. So they can also deploy this across different schools in terms of how this curriculum are being used in the different schools. So if government can also maybe create a policy to ensure that curriculum is unified, and they also create measures or quality controls. Maybe they send people to schools to ensure that people are actually following this unified approach. These are ways I think will actually help us go a long way building and solving for this audience.
So from what you've said, I think you're teetering towards having sort of like an EdTech adoption strategy, which would, cover the government's saying this is what they are doing in terms of infrastructure, or even giving you access to funding, right? Grants.
We don't mind.
That will say these are the devices, because I hear you, and no matter how much you're building, people still need to access your devices.
Yes.
And if it's for in-school use, there needs to be devices, either as tabs or as computers in their computer labs that make it easy for every learner. And I like what you've said about, unifying curriculums and systems. We want to be sure that if a child is in a public school system or is in a private school system, they are learning the same thing.
Yes.
It's now a problem of ensuring that you now have the solutions that are pushing the right things. Thank you so much. Now there's a bit of buzz, or there's a lot of buzz around learner-centered education. How would you describe the place of teachers in this development? And in what ways can policymakers strike a balance for both teachers and learners as technology begins to or continues to take the center stage?
Okay, so there's something we do as product people. Forgive me, I'm going to explain. So as product managers, when we're building or trying to deliver solutions, we're constantly thinking about our users that we're trying to deliver value for. So what works best for our users? So I will say that I think the same goes for a teacher and a student relationship, because at the end of the day, you're trying to deliver value for your learners. So instead of trying to say, okay, it might be all about you, it's more about the learners, what works best for your learner. And that is why I love this teaching methodology called inquiry-based learning methodology that puts the students at the center of learning. So we're all thinking around what works best for this learner, how can we impact this learner to ensure that they are learning what they are supposed to learn. So if more teachers can adopt this type of teaching methodology, or maybe if we explore others that give room for this learner to actually express themselves, to learn and adopt some of these materials or concepts that they are teaching them, it will go a long way. And also maybe creating some form of motivations for the learner. We at eLimu are very big at motivations, more of like celebrating them with rewards or any form of motivation. And that is why we've devised some initiatives. We call them like holiday adventure, which we do during the holiday period for when kids are at home, and something else we call the Christmas treasure hunt, which is actually coming up. Christmas is around the corner. I'm very, very excited about Christmas. So these kids get to participate, like learn, and they have some form of like reward for what they are doing on our platform, unlocking gems, coins, or badges. And for this Christmas treasure hunt, we have over 300,000 naira that we're ready to spend just to encourage our learners. So yeah, there are some ways that teachers can go about encouraging that students to learn.
And now speaking about ways that policymakers, the government, the systems can strike that balance for teachers, what would that look like? How would they support, teachers to understand how to put their learners center place when still putting technology to at the center? Because right now it's like there are two people in the center, and it's really just one center that you have. So how do they strike the balance? What can policy do, or can policy even do anything at the end of the day?
Okay, that's actually a very good question, because again, looking at it from the government perspective, I spoke about from teacher to student perspective.
Yeah.
So the student is more like the user in this case that we want to deliver value for. Well, looking at it from the government perspective, you have to go down to the teachers before you get to the learner. So what do you think can be valuable for the teachers? Again, we cannot just focus on the students and say they're adopting technology. If these teachers that are going to use this technology for these kids don't understand what it means or what technology even looks like, how to operate a simple tab, what am I not talking about having devices in the classroom? So if government or policies can be around ensuring that they are like qualitative or quantitative type of training for these teachers to explore different teaching methodology like the one I just spoke about, and also how to reuse these software solutions, or will be equipped with software understanding, we really go a long way, because technology is the future. So government have their own role to play to ensure that these teachers are equipped for the future of technology.
Just allow me ask this question. I know that I did some research about it before you came in, and I know that you just recently launched your teacher ambassadors program, and this is really one way that you can support teachers to understand how they can still keep their learners at the center and focus also on using it. Can you just give me like in 1 minute what that is about, and really speaking about it from the point of view of what the government can adopt, or looking for organizations that are doing similar things and support them, to support teachers?
Okay, the Teachers Ambassador Program is more of like creating a community for teachers where teachers can just come in. We can have conversations like the one we're having right now to just talk about challenges, discuss possible solutions that we can adopt in our own different schools or classroom where they teach. So we created that program where we can bring teachers from different do I want to use socio-economic, please?
Yeah, socio-economic.
So public, private teachers can come in together and they can just discuss what is possible. And we also introduce them to technology in terms of what is possible that you can use for these your learners. Also help them identify like maybe there's some certain struggles that they might be going through in the classroom. Maybe this struggle, that's something that technology can actually solve. Just helping them see how technology can play a big role into how this problem that they are facing can actually be solved. So it's something that we are doing. And we also created some form of reward mechanism for our teachers, because teachers are doing amazing, fantastic jobs. So we also created that channel for teachers to be celebrated and also be supported.
Thank you so much, Bridget. You have said so much. And I really do hope that we have these decision makers, policy makers at the other end listening and really taking down notes, or possibly reaching out to you to collaborate, because we know that they cannot do it on their own. And we also know that we have organizations such as eLimu that are doing really good work on driving EdTech adoption now for learners at that early years child development stage. So we want to see that synergy. We want to see where you're bringing your ideas to the table, and we're able to we can use the systems, already existing systems from the government's table to solve our problems in education. The speaker last week said, you have railroads, which are all the infrastructure that you have, which are all the things that you're building. Then you have the implementation.
Yeah.
And sometimes the thing that you just need to do is to plug into the existing things that the government have that would help you scale and get more learners on the platform. So thank you again, Bridget, your friendly PM,
That's me.
for being on the show again this year. Has been amazing. So much valuable insights shared from you, and I'm sure our listeners have taken down 1, 2, or 3 things at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Elu. It was great being here.
So great. To you, our listeners, we would love to hear from you. What are the kind of policy decisions you'd like to see the government make around EdTech adoption? Do you think the government is doing enough of bringing the different stakeholders in EdTech? In this stage, talking about the builders, the teachers, and even the users to a common table and seeing how we could bring about a strategy for EdTech adoption in Nigeria. Is the government doing enough? What type of policies would you want to see that would drive EdTech adoption in Nigeria? Send us an SMS or a WhatsApp message via 0703 165 0809. We would love to hear from you. You could also continue the conversation on our community on WhatsApp, on Telegram. Simply search EdTech Mondays Nigeria. You find us, join the channel and join the conversation. And in case you know anyone who missed out on this very packed episode of the show or previous episodes, do not worry, direct them to Spotify, EdTech Mondays Nigeria, or they can watch this episode and the previous episodes on YouTube at CC Hub Africa and just, drop their feedback and subscribe really so they just keep getting notified to watch the channel. Till I come your way same time next week, I remain your host, Chinyelu Akpa. Keep pushing the boundaries on education, and it's bye for now.
EdTech Monday is proudly brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.